Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. Delighted to have your company. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Rough, Tam McManus and Charlie Adam here with me. Don't forget, you can like, share and follow us on our Facebook. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and you can also watch us on Twitter as well. Lots of football to talk about. The SFA say they will not look into Celtic's trip to Dubai, despite the concerns of the SNP government here in Scotland. Neil Lennon has defended that situation. What about Colt teams from the old firm in the bottom league of Scottish football? Is that the way ahead? Would you like to see that happen? There are transfer speculation up and down the country. We'll be looking at some of the movers and shakers on that, and we will also look ahead to some tasty games over the course of tonight and get the thoughts of the guys who are here with us. Delighted to see Charlie with us. There's been a full investigation, Tam. Charlie caught with Dundee players on Broughty Ferry Beach, laughing and enjoying themselves. Surely an investigation needed, Tam.
I've seen that. A wee change. A wee day at the beach is no bad usually, but I've seen somebody launched a ball into the water. Charlie, that wasn't one of your shots, was it?
No, it wasn't. Lucky for everybody else, it wasn't. It was the lads were messing around and usual one of them miscontrolled it, no surprised, and ended up in the water. And the lads refused to actually go in for it, which I was quite shocked by. But I'm looking forward to seeing the 120 come out their way. 120 quid the boys are. It's an expensive day to the beach.
Absolutely, and as soon as you mentioned poor control there, I thought, wow, James McPake again. Unbelievable. Anyway, apart from that, let's concentrate on a team that are at the centre of quite a fair bit of consternation, I have to say. I have had a few emails and messages on Facebook and Twitter criticising my defence of Celtic yesterday. In some cases, they felt as if I had mentioned that I was against them going to Dubai, but I defended them. I think there are two issues here, Roughie, which some people are maybe missing here. An ill-advised trip by Celtic, but as the SFA have mentioned today, no probe into whether they've broken any rules. There's no need for an investigation. There are two separate issues here. Should they have gone? Did it send out the right message? And have they broken any rules? And the answer to that is no.
No, there is two parts there. There's no doubt about that. I don't think for a minute a team of Celtic's magnitude would have went ahead with it if they thought they were breaking any rules. I'm sure they've covered their track. Dubai is a place you can go to. You don't have to quarantine in the way back. The evidence is all there. The government know it. And I think it was just unfortunate it fell when Nicola Sturgeon said, right, we're going to extend this right into the end of the month. That made it look even worse. But I think Celtic think they've done everything right. I said yesterday, as a PR exercise, it might have been better to say, no, we're not going to go. But sometimes you go so far down the line in organising these things, you can't get out of it. But if the SFA aren't going to take any look into it, then I think that's, for me, that's it, done and dusted. I think the government get caught in the hop a wee bit. I mean, there's lots of things people have been telling the government to do in the last month or two, like closing the borders and all that and stopping people coming in. So they're as much to blame as anybody else. Sometimes you make decisions that, in hindsight, you should have done them a lot earlier than what they are. But if Celtic aren't going to be penalised in any way, then I think they're clear.
Yeah, Neil Lennon released a statement regarding their trip to Dubai, which some viewed as a jolly, recreational trip away. The camp was arranged some time ago, said Neil Lennon, with the full consultation of the footballing authorities and given approval by the Scottish Government. We understand we are in a very unique and difficult time, and there are now even tougher restrictions in place at home. But the camp is risk assessed and arranged in conjunction with the Scottish Football's Joint Response Group. We have put in place all the appropriate protocols and have undertaken the camp as we see the sporting benefits from it, and we hope it can do. We hope that it can do something for us as it has done in the past. And he goes on to say, from the first day, the boys have been working tremendously hard, as always, on this camp, which has served us so well over recent seasons. And of course, right off the back of that, Tam, you started seeing 400 photographs of everybody running about and training as well. I mean, honestly, I mean, it's like a ping pong, this whole issue. It's growing arms and legs. Some politicians, I feel, have been a wee bit naughty trying to play the political football on this one. But I think as far as Celtic are concerned, you know, they haven't broken the rules. I don't think they should have gone. What do you think?
Listen, I don't think they should have gone, Peter. I don't think anybody thinks they should have gone. You know, you look at people stuck here, back in Scotland, scunnered with it. You know, you can't get anywhere. You can't go and see your family, and Celtic are going to Dubai. So, listen, I think it was obviously organised before Nicola Sturgeon, you know, put us into another lockdown. And so, listen, there's a lot of anger amongst supporters. But, you know, as Roughie said earlier, if they're not breaking any rules, if the SPFL are not going to look into it, and the government are quite happy with it, then I don't see the problem. The only problem is Celtic are 19 points behind Rangers. You know, and if Celtic fans wouldn't have been bothered, if Celtic were ahead, they could have went anywhere in the world and they wouldn't have bothered. But the fact that they're well behind in the league, they just lost an Old Firm game, and there's pictures obviously of them having a beer, relaxing. I think that's what annoyed people, and you're right. I think in social media now, particularly Celtic social media, it's all hard work and people running about and training hard. You know, I don't think there'll be pictures of them in any downtime. That's for sure, because and another thing is, Peter, if they come back from Dubai and anybody's got COVID and they can't play that fixture that they've put back against Hibs, all hell's going to break loose. So they've got to be very extra vigilant and not to bring anything back or nobody in the club to get COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct on that, Tam. Charlie, I fully expect tomorrow to see pictures where Scott Brown contemplates going to bed to sleep, but he's doing 3,000 press-ups in a photo release just to keep everybody on side.
He's pint out of sight.
And we'll come back to Charlie because he's in an area which is, again, you know, he's been in about 400 different destinations in that house. Some of them have Wi-Fi, some of them don't. But we know exactly where it's going with regards to this. Although, to be fair, Roughie, Kilmarnock and St Mirren, they've got their appeal on January 14th. They are citing the situation with Celtic and the pictures that have been released as, you know, something to strengthen their defence.
Yeah, again, it's something you have to look at. I don't think that any two episodes are the same. You know, it's a completely different circumstance. I don't know the evidence of why Kilmarnock and St Mirren were punished. We were talking about it was like we all thought it was like players car sharing and all eating together, and they did come down with the COVID quite heavily. You know, that's why their games were cancelled. So they might cite it, but I think it'll be thrown out. You know, I think it's two different scenarios. You deal with what you know you're punished for rather than looking at whatever somebody else has done. Celtic haven't been punished for anything, but these two teams have been punished because there was something there that the authorities thought they should be punished for. So I don't think citing Celtic is going to help them at all. It'll be the evidence that they've got in front of them of what they were initially punished they should be defending rather than worrying about Celtic.
Yeah, I think Alison has summed it up perfectly there, Charlie. She says, is Charlie frozen? Charlie's probably frozen training, but he's back with us. Charlie, no surprise Scottish football just keeps on giving for us with regards to Kilmarnock, maybe using Celtic as their defence in their appeal. St Mirren might use it. St Mirren might look at it and say, well, wait a minute, look at them all sitting next to each other.
Yeah, I think, like Roughie said, there's two totally different circumstances here. What we've heard is the Kilmarnock and St Mirren players travelling in cars. Celtic will not have went to Dubai unless they were 100% sure that it was the right thing to do. As a football club, they knew they were in for a criticism after a result, and it becomes heightened. But Celtic think it's the right thing to do for their players and the group of players to try and get away and relax. And they will work hard this week, but I just think that I don't think Celtic have done anything wrong. They've taken an opportunity in the window to go away, and you know they're in the rights to do it because the protocols will be there. They'll be tested when they get back, and it's only them that's going to lose if any of the players have COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big question now, Tam, on this programme, as ever, we always like to see a kind of a backdrop. Roughie has his pictures, and I don't know about you, Tam, but I'm super excited to see who's going to come down the stairs behind Charlie.
That's a lovely little backdrop, isn't it? That's not fantastic.
There's nothing coming down that stairs. The only thing that might come down the stairs is a dog.
Right, okay. Right, fantastic. As long as you keep us posted. Calm your jets, Roughie, I know where you're going. Anyway, apart from anything else, we've got lots of transfer talk to talk about. Off the back of what Charlie mentioned there about, the Old Firm game, everybody was still talking about it. Now the attention switches in this month as to players that could potentially be going. I spotted one feature in the Sun today, Tam, which was players that could be leaving Celtic. They had it down to 11. I think I had it up at 19, and I've put a list together for you guys just to entertain you. Well, Duffy's on loan, so he'll go back, possibly now. Laxalt on loan, I think he'll go back. El Yunusi, almost certainly. Brown, I think, will retire. Barkas, I don't think he's good enough. El Hamid has basically said that he wants to return home because his family's not with him. Ayer's a transfer target. Anthony Ralston hasn't kicked a ball for Celtic. Christie's the possible transfer target. Rogic appearances thin on the ground, not regular enough. And Cham equally so. Griffiths, I think, has burnt his bridges. Ayeti and Klamala, not good enough. Edouard, transfer target. Bolin, goalie, remember him? Shved and Bayo are on loan at the moment, but I think they'll be shipped out. Tell me I'm too harsh, Tam.
No, I think you're right, Peter. I don't think there's many in that list there that will be at Celtic next season. I think
Scott Brown.
I think Scott Brown. Listen, it depends what Scott Brown wants to do, Charlie. I mean, I'm friendly with Scott, and it depends if he wants to stay and play another season. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be at Celtic. He might go into coaching. I know he's doing his A licence, but he might fancy maybe a wee trip abroad. I know he had a chance to go to Australia before he signed his new contract at Celtic. So maybe he'll maybe fancy a couple of years away in Australia or America. But whether it's at Celtic, I don't know if he'll play next season at Celtic. So maybe he'll look at a player coach at Celtic. But I think he'll maybe go abroad for a couple of years, see his career out, and then get into coaching.
Yeah, I mean, Roughie, what did you make of that list?
Yeah, well, the two obvious ones for me are Sham and Rogic. Personally, if the players themselves should be looking at their situation and saying, look, if I'm not good enough to hold down a position here, I need to go somewhere else. They'll get money for both of them. There's no doubt about that. They can be replaced. They haven't been permanent additions in the squad. Some of the younger boys have come in, McGregor and Christie. I think there will be a lot of changes. There's no doubt about that. You've got to have a clear out if you're having the season you're having just now. And there are players out there who will be very difficult to move on because a lot of them will be on fantastic wages. So that's another problem you've got. Many years they've got, and then you have to deal with them to get them out the door. But certainly, I would say 50% of the people you've got there should be out the door.
Charlie, as ever, you've got a situation where I've come up with, I think there might be 19 players on that list, Charlie. Not all of them will go because you can't totally and utterly transform it. Never mind a January transfer window, but in a summer window. But I think a lot of Celtic fans will look and think this is a time for not so much bloodletting, more or less a change of the guard.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think if win or lose the title, I think that Celtic to move forward, they will look to make changes. I think the form of people like Turnbull, who they paid a lot of money for, they'll be the next generation of Celtic players. And it's just trying to pick and choose which ones they bring in to go with that. But I just think that you need somebody like Scott Brown in there that understands the club, still in around the dressing room, helping these younger lads, because it's okay being able to perform for 3 or 4 games at Celtic. You need to perform for 20, 25 games in a row playing for the Old Firm. So his experience in there, knowing how the club works, will be vital for them next season if they look to have a change of their squad, which I think they will do. I wouldn't surprise me if somebody like a McGregor goes for good money, and Christie, people like that as well, and they try and rebuild the squad to. Obviously, I think the Rangers will win the league and they'll start again, and it'll be a different project with probably a new manager.
Yeah, Bella McGuinness has said to me, is there any player at Celtic that you think is good enough, Peter? I know it does. list, Bella, but I think you'll find quite a few of them, including the loans, will be departing. And I think when you look, Tam, and I don't think I'm being unkind to them, Cham just hasn't contributed. Tom Rogic doesn't make regular first team starts. You've got to have a strong bench, but if they're not contributing, you can't change games. And you look at the other players and their contributions. I mean, I've got Griffiths out the door because it's just not good enough, Tam.
Yeah, listen, I agree, Peter. I think you've got guys like Rogic and then Cham and Griffiths. I think they'll be out the door because I don't think they're going to be regular starters for Celtic. Obviously, a new manager, I think, will come in, whether it's now or in the summer. I don't think Neil Lennon will be the manager at Celtic, so he might have his own ideas. He might have his own players he wants to bring in. I think there's guys there who you would want to keep. You would want to keep Christie. You'd want to keep, McGregor. You'd want to keep guys like that and build your team around them. Turnbull, Sorrow, and so I just think that there's going to be a big clear out there. But you've got guys in there who've had too many chances for me. Tom Rogic had a little bit of a flurry, maybe a month or two ago when he came back into the team, but now he's dropped back out again. And if you're going to be paying big money for guys like that to sit on the bench and maybe come in 4 or 5 games a season, it's not good enough. So I think you're going to be looking to shift guys like that. And Sham, definitely. And Sham's got to go. I don't think he's been motivated. I don't think he's been dedicated to Celtic over the last season or two.
Interestingly enough,
if you look at it, Celtic could have another 11 players for next season, brand new team.
Yeah.
Because I don't think your Frimpongs and all that. I don't think he's good enough. I think people say he's good going forward defensively. He's not the level I think everybody thinks he is. They desperate need the right winger. Forrest obviously is coming back from an injury. I think he's been a massive loss to them. But if you look at the numbers you've got there and other players as well that might want away if they lose 10 in a row, then they're looking at a brand new team.
James Loughlin, I like to read out.
Another thing as well, Peter, if there was a new manager coming in, there's enough players there going out the window to give the new manager a war chest without actually touching any of the money. Because if you start getting rid of all these players, you could have 30-40 million pounds to be dealing with at the start of the season without actually breaking into your bank if you're going to get rid of some of these senior players.
Yeah, Jim, I like to read out positive messages, negative ones, opinions. It's all about opinions. That's why we talk about these things. And we're not too far away from the list that I've put together for Rangers to see if you agree with this or not. But James Loughlin just says quite simply, Peter, you know nothing. Well, James, let's wait and see how many of them are still here next season. And if you're happy with a squad that's... I pointed it out. If you're happy, James, with a team that's had a 32-point swing from 13 points in winning the league to 19 points behind, then you're one of those unique Celtic fans. What about the Rangers list? I put it together based on the fact that the board itself said that they were sell some of the sellable assets. Zungu is on loan. McCrory and Jamie Murphy, I think they might get sold. They're on loan at the moment. Defoe, he may well retire. He's in that Scott Brown. Davis, I think he might actually probably get a new deal. I think Steve Davis has been a real bonus for them. Firth contract's expiring. McGregor contract expiring. I think he'll be there. Greg Stewart hasn't cut it. Edmondson and Jones have already been told they can go on loan. Barisic, Morelos are sellable assets. Barker and Middleton haven't contributed. Charlie Adam, is that a fair list or an unfair one?
No, you're fair. You're spot on, Peter. I think the only three certainties will be Barisic probably won't sell him unless it's silly money. McGregor and Davis will be there. The rest I think could be in for leaving. Defoe it's up to his decision really what he wants to do. If Steve wants him round to be round as an experienced player, or maybe going into the coaching side as well, that might be something that you look at. But he might want to go back down south and start something else. So I don't know what will happen with Defoe, but Davis and McGregor are certainties to be staying, I think, for next season and what they've contributed. Barisic has been excellent, unless big money comes for him. But I think, like you say, the ones that are Morelos, Edmondson, Jones, I think I could see them all going.
Yeah, Alec Kelly says, Peter, you forget Rangers will be able to offer Champions League football next season. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Alec. I think it's a great point that you make. But the point I'm making here, Tam, is Rangers have already said, look, this is the time to cash in on 2 or 3 players that have a value. So they will cash in on them. They've got to try and balance the books, shift off some of the loan signings back to their clubs, get rid of some players who haven't contributed. This is what Steven Gerrard did last year to get to a point where he has potentially a title-winning side this year.
Yeah, I think obviously the mode this season for Rangers was just to win the league, and I think they wanted to keep all their top players. There were obviously a few offers in the summer for some of the players, and they kept them because this season was massive for Rangers. You know, they gambled everything into stopping Celtic winning 10 in a row and getting themselves, as you said, into the Champions League. So I think now that that's near enough certain that they're going to be in, they're going to win the league. They've got guys who they'll sell. I think Morelos will definitely go. I think they'll look to cash in on him. And there's other guys there who've been outstanding. You know, Tavernier. Listen, somebody could come in for him from England and pay big money for him. He's been absolutely brilliant for Rangers. And I'm sure there's clubs in England who would take him. So it just depends, as Charlie said, if it's a big offer for your top players, you might have to go and look at it. Ryan Kent's another one. They kept with Leeds were interested in him. So there's guys there that they can sell on. And now they've stopped 10 in a row. You know, they've got that bonus of more European money coming. They might be tempted to cash in on them.
Jim Dolan is
don't you think, guys, the difference between their sales and the Celtic sales are the Celtic sales are just not up to the mark. What you're doing now is you're selling Rangers first team players. Now you're selling them. The people you're throwing out the window aren't going to bring in any money. The Stewards and the Edmondsons and all that. So what you're doing is you're making that Rangers strong side weakened, whereas Celtic are getting money in for players they don't need. So I think there's a big difference in who you're shipping out and who you're keeping.
I don't understand your point, Ruffy, because this is what.
If you're going to start selling, Tavernier, you're going to start selling the top players. You're making your side not as strong as what you are. Whereas Celtic are getting rid of them, and they're rid of the dross.
Celtic are going to get top whack for the money for the ones that have not been playing. Rangers will get top whack for your Taverniers. Morelos.
But what I'm saying, Charlie, is you're taking the 3 best players out of your team. Celtic are selling Sham. They're selling Sham and they're selling Rogic and maybe getting 10 million for 2 players they don't really need. If you start selling the top players, you're weakening your stride.
Edouard?
Sorry?
Edouard?
I missed that. Yeah, I think he comes into that category, yeah. Tavernier certainly does. Barisic comes into that category. So if you sell the 3 of them, that's 3 of your best 11 players you've let go out the door just to draw some money in.
Listen, they're not away yet, Ruffy. It was just a list I put together based on the fact that the Rangers board said, listen to me, the Rangers board said, listen, there are sellable players now, and that's what we've got to do. Stuart Robertson said already, we've got to try and cash in on players we've developed that now have a really good value. So I just put together a list. They could all be here next season, Ruffy. It's just a list. I
was going on the assumption that the 3 of them are going. Yeah, you can sell one of them and make lots of money. But the point I was making was the discussion was we're getting rid of Celtic players that Celtic don't want. This discussion is we're getting rid of Rangers players who Rangers do need.
Yeah, well, listen, how many times have you seen a manager, Ruffy, who's had a player sold that he didn't really want to let go? But when you're balancing the books in this current COVID situation, which brings me
everyone's for sale.
Well, everyone's for sale, but it brings me nicely on to this next point, which I think 2 years ago, when it was, well, it's been mooted for the last decade and maybe even longer than that, which was, of course, the arrival of Celtic and Rangers Colt teams in the lower leagues. Now, it was kicked into more than a few in the lower divisions because they weren't happy at Celtic and Rangers, blooding their younger players in the league and possibly making money. I would say, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, Charlie, but I think it might change now because obviously Celtic and Rangers in that plan that they put together wanted to give £1 million to League Two clubs for a place in the bottom tier. There will be incremental payments made. Celtic and Rangers, these Colt clubs can't get promoted up to the Premiership, but I think now because of the financial situation, if you have a Celtic and Rangers Colt team in the lower leagues and it maybe takes 2,000 or 3,000 extra to a ground, I think they might actually be looking at it, in a better light now. What do you think?
I'm all for it, Peter. I think these under-20s or whatever games you call them are a waste of time. I think it's important that these kids get out and play proper men's football against experienced players that have played, 200-300 games at senior level and help their development. I think it's a good thing, and it'll help the next generation of the old firm players, because if they don't, they're just stuck. They're stuck at Rangers. It is hard to get into the first team at Rangers and Celtic, but if the club are willing to go and fund something like that and help League Two clubs and go and promote it, then I definitely am all for it. And that's why I said before that I'm surprised that no Premiership clubs have actually come and tried to buy, i.e. a St Mirren and try to bring players into St Mirren. Premier League club that's no debt, good stadium, training ground facility. I'm talking about an English Premier League club the owners coming buying that club and bringing their players up to produce them and allowing them to go and play at a good level.
Tam McManus?
Yep, I totally agree. I've been a big advocate of the Colt teams for a number of years. I wrote an article on it about 3 years ago, and I agree with Charlie. I think it's beneficial for young players to go out and play against seasoned professionals, veteran players. But I also think that in terms of a Rangers Colt team, it's important that you've got your own coaches coaching them, because you could send boys out on loan and they play a totally different style of play from what your parent club plays. So Rangers, say for instance, a Rangers boy goes out and plays an East Fife and they play 4-4-2 and they maybe go longer. If Rangers Colt team would play 4-3-3, the same as the first team. So you would have your club's own coaches in there coaching them that system, and they're more easily available to go into the first team. They know what positions they're playing. They're well accustomed to the systems and the tactics. So I think that's a major thing for me for Celtic Rangers, is to get their own coaches coaching these boys into the same system that the first team play, so that it's easier for them to go into the first team. And they're also getting the benefit, as Charlie said, of playing against seasoned professionals and playing for points, playing for bonus money, and playing in league tables. So I think it's a big step up from the under-20s that we've got in our reserve league.
Yeah, and Roughie, they're just basically trying to replicate what Johan Cruyff put in place all those years ago, and that was developed at La Masia in Barcelona, which is basically everybody at every level coming through when they get into eventually a Johan Cruyff side, a Pep Guardiola side. They all play the same way.
Yeah, I think the plus and minuses are the whole thing. I totally agree with them coming into the lower divisions as a team. Obviously with stipulations of promotion and relegation and whatever. I would buy into that more so than Rangers and Celtic try and loan players out to all the other teams, and then when you come up against the teams, you take the player out of the equations. I'm totally against that. I think it's an absolute farce that the Rangers and Celtic can send players out to St Mirren and whatever, and then when they come up against them, they can't play. The other thing I've got against is a lot of clubs have got academies. We've got an academy that we work on players for 5 and 6 years. You get a fruition after maybe 3 or 4 years. We're getting to the now with a young boy called Senna, who is absolutely superb. I think he's only 19. He's come through the academy. I wouldn't like to see that kind of thing stopping. So I think a Rangers team or a Celtic team getting into a lower division would be bang on for me, more so than sending players out to clubs and hindering the progress of Scottish home-based players. That would be my biggest thing about the whole thing.
Yeah. We are in 2021, and finally, Tam, Dundee United players have agreed to that wage cut at the moment. It will go back up to the full wages when fans eventually get back into the ground. It's been a hard sell based on their spending and the players that they've bought. I think they've had a lot of work trying to convince everybody, especially with the PFA representing a number of the players. Barney.
Yeah, listen, I've been in that situation myself, where I've been at clubs and they've been struggling financially and they come and ask you to take a wage cut. And listen, it's a difficult one to accept. You obviously sign a contract and you budget for that contract, your mortgage, your car, whatever. You're budgeting on that wage. So it's a difficult one to swallow, particularly, I think, if the club are then going to sign other players. So it's been a balancing act for Dundee United. I think that Mark Ogren has said that they'll all get their money back, and once they sell a player or whatever, the wages will go back up to full. So I think that's been a huge part in them agreeing to take the wage cut, but it's a difficult one, and they've obviously done it for the sake of the club. And I just hope, because we've seen Dundee United's the books from last year, and it was horrendous the amount of money they're losing. So I think it'll be even worse this year. So they had to do something to stop the rot, stop the bleeding, and I think they've done that. And the players should take a lot of credit for agreeing to that.
And Charlie, I noticed Dundee are sniffing around Paul McMullen. There's lots of pre-contracts kicking about. Is he the type of player that could add to what you already have there at Dundee?
Yeah, listen, he's a good player that I'd obviously had nothing to do with me. I'm a player, so I wouldn't know who they're trying to sign. So it's difficult. I'm only reading what everybody else is reading. But if it was a pre-contract or he tried to get him in the door, and obviously not played as much for United this year, and yeah, he's a good player, winger with a bit of pace, good quality in the wide areas. So it'd be interesting to see if we can get it over the line. But obviously, like I said, I'm not privy to what the manager's looking for. So we'll see what happens. But if he turns up, he'll be welcome, and hopefully would be able to help us.
Yeah, brilliantly dodged answer there, Charlie. I should have asked you in the first place, to be perfectly honest with you, but nevertheless, you answered it with your usual decorum. I've got to ask you this, Chaz. Dundee, we haven't spoken about the fact that you battered the league leaders' hearts. That sent a message to them. When you consider I watched the first game where you were absolutely battered 6-2. What's changed?
Confidence, belief. You've seen us that first day of the season, Peter. We're not the same team now. There's a different mentality in the group, and a couple of results. I think we got caught cold that night against Hearts. I thought we spoke the game up, and we tried to put pressure on, and it never worked. And they gave us a doing, and we held our hands up. We had a slow start to the season, but we've picked up in the last few weeks. And we played well the other night for the first half. They obviously come back into it, but no, we thoroughly deserved the victory.
Yeah, full marks to you for that, Charlie. Can you catch them? Can you win the league?
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. Stony-faced as well, Tam. That's what I like about the man. Got it, Dundee. That could change your mind. Tam, I've got to ask you about this because I saw it today and I thought to myself, surely his career hasn't dropped that much. Kevin Nisbet, Sunderland are interested in him. Sunderland currently 11th in League One. Now, I don't know about you, but if anybody ever phones me and says, I'm thinking about moving to Sunderland, I say to them, I don't think so.
No, I think that's just a paper talk, Peter. I think that Kevin Nisbet's far better than that. I think obviously the last couple of games he's looked tired. He's had a little bit of a break now before the Celtic game on Monday. Hopefully he's refreshed and he's ready to go again because he's played a lot of football this season for a young guy, and I think he's much better than Sunderland. I think he's minimum English Championship at the minute. So hopefully, the time will come, Peter, where he probably will move on from Hibs. But hopefully Hibs get a big fee for that. And I think Dunfermline have got a sell on, and that money stays within Scottish football, but not just now, and not for a club like Sunderland. I think he's got another year, 18 months at Hibs to keep banging the goals in, and then you'll sell him for a couple of million.
Yeah, and one person who is leaving Hibs today, Tam, has released a statement. Leanne Dempster had her statement to say farewell to the Hibs fans. I didn't arrive a Hibs fan, but it was a challenge I wanted to get stuck into to restore the club to where it should be. Surrounded by some wonderful people, I'm proud of what was achieved and the foundations that have been laid to push on. I'm glad we managed to put a few smiles on faces along the way. It's been a privilege. From that day in May 2016, some European adventures and promotion to getting a legend like Pat Stanton back in an official capacity. No matter where I go, the club will mean so much to me. It really got under my skin, and I wish the staff and the players all the best going forward. There are too many individuals to mention who deserve my thanks. They know who they are. And GGTTH, Tam, is, just an abbreviation for all the Hibs fans to get into from Leanne.
No, listen, she's done a great job. I've spoken about it before, to deliver the Scottish Cup. Listen, we all know how much the Scottish Cup meant to Hibs. They hadn't won it in over 100 years. I think that, unfortunately, now it's Dundee who have got the worst Scottish Cup record in Scotland now. Hibs have buried that hood out. But you never know, Chaz, next couple of seasons, it might be your year.
Bonnie Rig on Saturday in the Cup. It's tough.
Was it Dundee's over 100 years as well now? So Hibs, they've now took over that mantle of being the longest team that's never won it. But no, Leanne done a great job in delivering the Scottish Cup. And as you said, getting the club promoted and back in and now in a great position, sitting fourth in the league. Was brilliant for Leanne Dempsey. She leaves with the best wishes of every Hibs supporter. I'm absolutely certain of that.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct there, Leanne. She's good for football.
Sorry, going back to the Nisbet thing. If you're Rangers or Celtic, do you buy him in the summer to be your number 9?
Wow, not good enough. Roughie?
Not seen enough of him. The end of the season would be a good judgment. We all know what he's done when we come in there. When we look at, I tend to look at Greg Stewart. Tend to look at the boy Jones, who were magnificent in the teams that they played for, and you would say, why wouldn't you buy them? You have to be an asset. And then sometimes they come to Rangers and Celtic, and Charlie will know better than me, it doesn't always bear good for you because you were the best player on the other side. There's other things you've got to handle, but if the boy's got it in his makeup, we've seen players kick on, but some players don't kick on for whatever reason, and I think Greg Stewart comes into that category, and the boy Jones. So I would take a gamble on him. I mean, I know you're saying, Peter, not good enough. Might be at this moment in time not good enough, but some of the money that's going about just now, depending on what you would get him for, it might be the case that you just wait for a year and try not to lose as much money as what you've laid out.
Tam?
I don't think he's good enough now to be Celtic Rangers number 9. I think he's a very, very good young player. But as Roughie said, it's a big step up to go to Celtic Rangers when you've got that pressure of scoring every week. He's at a club just now, the fans love him. He's doing well. I think he needs to play at the Premier League level and keep proving himself at that level for another year, 18 months. He's still a youngish boy. I think in a year, 18 months, if he's maybe got 30, 40 goals under his belt, then the bigger clubs will come sniffing and he'll have improved. He'll maybe polished up the wee bits and pieces that he has to go into that environment and be the main striker at one of those top clubs. So I don't think at the minute, Celtic Rangers would be going as their number 9, but certainly in a year, 18 months' time, he could be good enough to go into those teams.
Yeah, okay. Liam Kelly, incidentally, has signed a loan deal at Motherwell until the end of the season. So whoever the new manager is, they've got one in.
Well, that goal in the weekend was shocking.
Wow. By the way, honestly, I watched all 3 goals and then I started to just put my fingers over my eyes because it was just howler after howler. But nevertheless, who is going to be the new manager? Here's a quick rundown of how close it's getting to calling that name.
Motherwell are set to announce their new manager in the next 24 hours after 4 candidates were interviewed to replace Stephen Robinson. Let's take a closer look at all of them. Former Scotland international Graham Alexander is the favourite at evens after being sacked by Salford City in October, despite losing none of his opening 5 games and having taken the club into the Football League. Alexander has never managed or played for a club north of the border, appearing for Preston and Burnley amongst others, before taking charge of Fleetwood Town and Scunthorpe. However, he does fit the mould of what Motherwell appear to want, a young manager who aims to play attacking football. Tommy Wright is well known on these shores after a 7-year spell with St Johnstone was ended in May last year. He led the club to 3 fourth-place finishes and their greatest ever achievement, the 2014 Scottish Cup. At 4-1, he is second favourite and a safe pair of hands that would surely guide well to safety. Keith Lasley was Robinson's assistant for 3 years, having spent 11 at the club as a player and captain. He knows how things are run in Lanarkshire and is keen on the role, but did himself no favours with last weekend's 3-0 Lanarkshire derby loss to Hamilton, and has never taken sole charge of a team before. The left field candidate is journeyman manager Simon Grayson, who most recently managed Kendal Town in the 8th tier of English football. However, Grayson is the most experienced man on the list, having 8 clubs to his name, including Leeds United and Sunderland, although the bookies put him out at 6-1.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Tam, where's your money?
Oh, it wouldn't be Simon Grayson. If you watched Sunderland Till I Die, you wouldn't be getting him as your manager. He was murder. Graham Alexander, obviously, we've seen a lot of him on the Salford documentary. I quite liked him. I liked the way he spoke and the way he set his teams out. I think at Salford City, the pressure on him was immense to get that club into the League One Championship. The money they're putting in behind the scenes, obviously, with the Man United boys. So I think he'd been an exciting one for the Motherwell fans. I think a safer pair of hands is Tommy right? If you want to go down the road of, listen, we'll just plod away, we'll keep the club up this season, I think you go with Tommy Wright. But I think Graham Alexander's a wee bit of excitement one. I quite like him as a manager. I think I'd go for him if I was a Motherwell fan.
Yeah, Charlie, you're shaking your head.
I'm Tommy Wright. They're in a Motherwell in a bad way. You know, they're sitting bottom of the league. You need somebody to come in and that knows the league, got the experience, push up from where they are, because you know the confidence is low, and they need somebody that's been there. You know, it's a gamble bringing in Alexander from England. Never been to Scotland apart from on international duty. So I don't think that's a risk that Motherwell could be taking. I think they need to go safe and trying to rebuild again and get the confidence back into the group. So I would go with Tommy Wright.
Yeah, Michael Climby agrees with you, Charlie. He says Tommy Wright. Lachlan Gold says Neil Lasley. He's the cheap option, Roughie. I don't think Motherwell are in bad financial situation.
No, they are not in the least. With obviously the sale of Turnbull, but as Charlie said there, Tommy Wright has dragged St Johnstone most seasons, whether it's down the bottom of the league up to the middle or into the top six, and he just brought in players, you know, when things looked really, really bad. Lost a lot of experienced players, went with a lot of young players, took a lot of criticism for it, and then they all kicked in. So, no, I think he knows what it's all about down there. I would give it to him. I would also keep Keith Lasley just as a wee backup, keep the supporters in tow, along with Maurice Ross, obviously. And I think they three would be a good partnership to get Motherwell out of where they are.
Okay, we'll find that out in the next 24 hours, and obviously you'll have Liam Kelly in there, and whoever the new man is, he'll be able to hopefully shuffle the pack a wee bit. Yeah, absolutely.
Liam Kelly is very good keeper.
Yeah, you'll need more than that, Tam.
Yeah, I think he will. I think he needs to. I spoke about it Monday. You know, he's got Declan Gallagher. I read if he plays a certain amount of games, a new contract kicks in. He doesn't want to play the games because he's a free agent. You've got Stephen O'Donnell out of contract in January, and you've got Alan Campbell out of contract. So that's three of your best players. So I think whoever comes in has got to be looking at them, sitting them down and going, listen, we need you here to at least the end of the season to keep us in the division. Because if you lose the three of them, it doesn't matter who you get in as a manager, I think they'll be in trouble.
That's another worry for Motherwell. Your club captain has said he doesn't really want to play, doesn't want to get these 6 games because he thinks it's going to hinder himself getting a move. You know, you're sat bottom of the league, you need to get your finger out, because if you don't and you make the wrong decision, you won't be going to Euros. So he's got to think of that as well. So it's a tough decision for Declan Gallagher and what he does. But if I was him, I'd make sure he was getting Motherwell out of the position you're in, because they gave him a chance leaving Livingston. So, you know, it's a time that they have to pay it back a little bit.
Charlie, in lockdown, as well as every one of us talking about box sets and various programmes that we're watching, we try and get as much football in as possible. When you were playing down there, were you a fan of the League Cup?
Yeah, it's probably the only time I was getting a game. Getting all these lads are getting rested for the Premier League. But no, listen, I won the League Cup at Liverpool, so it's when you're at clubs like I say, when I was at Stoke, it was always an opportunity to probably win a trophy, because the top teams rested their players. Obviously, they have such good squads now, and the players that come in are top quality. But you always think you have an edge, you have a chance of reaching a semi-final of the League Cup. So it was always good to me. I was lucky enough to win it with Liverpool, so it was something that we try to take serious, you know.
Yeah, well, Jose Mourinho's taking it seriously after last night's win over Brentford.
I think if there is any secret, is to take it seriously. There is no secret. I come to England 2004, and I remember that in that period, I had to learn the meaning of the cups in here, and I always took it serious. I think if there is any secret, is to take it seriously.
If you get a trophy in there, Tam, suddenly, the fans are right behind you. I think they're right behind him now because he's got Tottenham well organised. They are in the mix for the title. Yeah,
I think a club like Spurs don't win stuff very often. I think the last thing they won was a League Cup maybe a few years ago under Harry Redknapp, or was it Sergio Ramos? No, Ramos.
Wandy Ramos.
Wando Ramos, Randy Ramos, Sergio's brother. But no, they won that with Spurs. They won that with Spurs. And their supporters will be looking to win something, because Spurs have always been looked upon as one of those nearly teams down in England. Oh, they finish in the top four, they never win anything. They go to the Champions League final with Pochettino, but they never win anything. I think Mourinho wants to get in there and change that. He wants to change the mentality and wants them to be a club that's up there and winning trophies. So I think the League Cup, he's obviously taking it very serious. With a strong team out last night and a good win. So no, I think the Spurs supporters will be desperate for them to win something.
Yeah, don't worry, Tam, if you get names wrong. It hasn't bothered Roughie over the last 9 years, by the way. Just fire in a name. I mean, as far as Roughie's concerned, Frank Morelos is one of the best strikers in the country. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Sooner he moves, the better.
Absolutely.
Who's the other one?
Tam's is what is it? Tavernier.
Tam's got Tavernier as one of the four musketeers. I mean, he just can't pronounce his name, to be perfectly honest with you. Listen, there's one guy that I cannot speak highly enough of him, and I'm so delighted that he's back at Manchester United. He has got the DNA of Man United in his blood, and even Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is delighted that Darren Fletcher is back at Old Trafford.
It's also important that we bring players or ex-players that have been somewhere else. I've been somewhere else after having worked under Mick Phelan and Sir Alex and Carlos, that we know one way of the coaching, but they've been at different clubs and got different ideas, and Fletch with his ideas and thoughts will improve us in the backroom staff.
Charlie, what a great lad Darren Fletcher is.
Apart from he never texted me back. It took him about 10 hours to text me back. I was fuming with him. But he said, listen, it's long hours now, but no, he's delighted to be back, and I spoke to him all day. It's he's delighted to be back. I'm buzzing for him because he's a great guy. Like you say, he's a top man, and for what he's achieved to be such down to earth, and somebody I sort of looked up to as a younger player coming through, because he was the Scottish player that was doing it in the Premier League, and to share a dressing room and being around the Scotland squad was amazing. So good to see him, because he's been through a lot, and he's a great guy and will become a top coach.
Yeah, Roughie, it's good having people who understand a club back there. You are back as you're on the board at Partick Thistle, but you were back as an ambassador, a good few years ago as well. So it's always good to get people who understand what the club's about.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and if you can get close enough to help the manager out in any way when things aren't going particularly well, you would like to think the relationship you have with supporters clubs or certain organisations, that they look favourably on you, and they're going to do that with him, because he is a model professional. I can't remember anybody saying anything bad about him at all, and he's the kind of guy that you want walking about the place. And we keep talking about every club should have somebody like that, whether it's Rangers, Celtic, Hibs, Aberdeen, or whatever. Yeah, you mentioned Pat Stanton. Pat Stanton visibly walking about at match days, mingling with the hospitality, which he has been doing for years anyway. So he must be given something bigger to do. But some person like that at every club that the supporters can relate to, old and young, is always good for any club.
Yeah, it gives you that sense of family, and I think that's vitally important at clubs. And the other person I'm about to mention, and I make no bones about mentioning this, because on the PLZ Soccer, we love football north and south of the border, across in Europe, and of course right across the globe. And we'd like to talk to you about it. I mean, of people of a certain age, this next man, I would have his chewing gum card. He was the type of person that you loved watching on the television. He had great skill. He was a box-to-box midfielder, as well as being an absolute legend. And it was, a tinge of sadness today, just reading that Colin Bell had passed away at Manchester City.
Manchester City legend Colin Bell has died at the age of 74. Bell scored 152 goals in 492 appearances and was part of the iconic City trio of Bell, Mike Summerby and Franny Lee. The three led City to a league title, 3 domestic cups and the European Cup Winners' Cup in the late 60s and early 70s. His career was cut short by injuries, but not before he made 48 appearances for England as one of the best midfielders of his generation. Colin Bell will be remembered as one of Manchester City's greatest ever players.
When you think of best law in Charlton outside at Old Trafford, Roughie, as far as the Etihad is concerned, Bell, Lee and Summerby in the 60s and 70s was a formidable trio.
Yeah, I think he's actually got one of the stands named after him. You know, I think I briefly touched him. I think he maybe played in the 1976 Scotland-England game at Wembley, my first game, and I think he took part in that at some stage. He was a box-to-box player. He was just an absolute athlete. He was one of these guys who just got up and down the park without anybody noticing, know what he was actually doing, but very highly respected by Man City. There's no doubt about that. The supporters will remember him forever. He is. I mean, we all say legends at clubs, but certainly they three you mentioned will never ever be forgotten at Man City.
Yeah, they reckon he's one of the top 5 players of all time, Charlie, at Manchester City. His nickname was Nijinsky, which was a famous racehorse, which gives you an indication of, what an athlete he was. He picked up a knee injury at 29, and I think that curtailed what would have been, more than the caps he got for England, 48. But the other thing about him, Charlie, not only was he a great player who won the league, the FA Cup, the League Cup, the Cup Winners' Cup with City, he had tremendous humility. He was one of those players that didn't go about, gloating about his career or anything like that. He was humble.
No, Peter, I was fortunate enough when I was a kid many moons ago. I used to go to Man City school holidays and things like that. And the scout at the time, John Ferguson, used to take us down there, Scottish guy, and he was really friendly with Colin Bell and Mickey Summerbee and people like that. And I was fortunate enough to meet these type of people because there's the dog going up the stairs. There you go.
Hey!
So anyway, talking about going back in the day, I was fortunate enough to meet these type of people that were going around Man City. They were walking around the club and at the training grounds and things like that. And legend of Man City, and will be remembered. Obviously got the stand, but he is a legend at that club.
And I can tell you in the 21st century, Tam, there are people who conduct themselves in a similar fashion. There are lots of great footballers who understand the enormity of the job that they've got, how special it is, and they understand the link between the fans. So it's not an old thing. It's not an old generation thing. There are players today who completely and utterly get the privileged position they're in and the link that they have to maintain with the supporters. And the reason I mention that, Tam, is because basically, Royal Antwerp striker Didier Lamke Zay turned up at his ground wearing an Anderlecht top. That's their great rivals, to go in to training, and he didn't get in. But I think he was trying to force this move away. Now, Tam, come on, it doesn't get any lower than that in my book.
No, that's just modern football, isn't it? It's very similar. What was the boy for West Brom? Was it Odin Wingy? He done it, didn't he? Outside the training ground. Was he with you, Peter? Was he with you, Charlie, at Stoke?
Yeah, he come to Stoke with us and that, and he just said, but he got told from the chief exec that the deal was done, and that's why he drove to London. Well, it was brilliant. He used to get rigged for every transfer window. He used to get rigged for it.
It sure was. Listen, there are two things that I want to finish off before we go. And the big burning question, everybody's been talking about it. There's been lots of speculation. And of course, sometimes we deal in rumours. Sometimes we like to chat about it because it is a football show. But everybody's been asking about it. And I know Tam and Charlie might not have been up to speed on this. But yesterday, there was such a big story breaking on our programme. What happened to the dog that Roughie had spotted in the garden that had collapsed? Roughie asked to leave the show, guys, for 30 seconds so he could go and see if the dog was all right. And people are just asking, what's happened to the dog, Roughie? Did you have to administer mouth to mouth? Was the dog okay?
I went out afterwards and the dog was still in the garden, not particularly in good health, but being the good chap that I am, I took it up to the police station because obviously somebody owned it. I had a dog collar on. The owner came and collected his dog, thanked me very much, gave me a tenner, which I took, and said thanks very much.
That happened to me the other night.
So no, the dog has been saved, but I wouldn't have liked to have seen it roaming about where I live in the temperatures that were going on last night. So a lost dog refound and back happy at home.
That's magnificent, Charlie, isn't it?
I was lucky it happened to me Sunday night. Same situation. I was in the police station, Govan police station, collecting my dog. I went out to the car and I left the door open. He got out and he ran up the street, and it lost him for about an hour and a half. And fortunately enough, somebody was nice enough to hand him into the police station.
And that's fantastic. And just at that, I don't know how he managed to do that, but Charlie mentioned there the heartwarming story of finding his dog, and then you can hear Daddy in the background as well. Is that your kids roaming about as well, Charlie?
My little boy, yeah, he wants to play football in the hallway. That's why. Yeah, he's like that to me. Hurry up and get off that. So let's play.
That's good enough for me. Listen,
is Tam not going to tell us about the dog he lost in Glenrothes? The one he didn't want anybody looking for.
No, Tam's not going to tell us that story, Roughie, to be honest. That's for another day. But it just shows you how caring Roughie is. He's enhanced his reputation, not only a housewife's favourite on this programme, but now saves the dog as well. Can it get any better than that? And he's got a wee tenner as well, by the way, which he happily took. Well, that's what you do when you're at that age. You take every bit of money you can get coming your way. I leave you with this thought tonight. Will you be watching Manchester United against Manchester City, or will you be flicking the channel to watch AC Milan against Juventus? The only reason I mention this to you is Juventus have won 9 successive titles in a row. They're going for 10. They are 10 points behind AC Milan, but they've still got a game in hand. Can they still win the title, or is this the end of the dynasty? Dynasties do end, after all. I wonder what's happening over on Peter and Roughie's football show in Italy at the moment. Are the Juventus fans all going nuts? Who knows? Anyway, I leave you with that thought. Don't be insular about Great Britain. End of dynasties happens everywhere in football, would you believe? Thanks to Charlie. Great. I'm going to let him play football in the hall with the kid. Make sure you lock the door, Charlie, so the dog doesn't get out. Thanks to Roughie, the dog saver, and Tam McManus as well. Join us tomorrow if you can. Thanks.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.